What's up, everyone? Carmen here with Pittsburgh White Schwartz, coming at you with a brand new deep dive today on Assault Lily. This is going to be serious time. I really care about Assault Lily. Assault Lily has been my favorite set. It's the set that I have played the most, the set that I've done the most testing with, played the most different builds. I think I've sleeved every card in the set at least once, probably multiple times. And I was so excited for the new set. I wanted to dig into it. I wanted to test all the new stuff, vet all the old stuff, sort of bring everything together. And I'm finally ready to sort of show what I've done, sort of what I've come up with after all of that testing. So this is going to be a long one, going to be very exhaustive, going to really dig into it. If you're not into Assault Lily, I apologize, but you might find some good things, just sort of like how you test a new set, how you approach like a really expansive, really wide set too. Assault Lily has so many varying, extremely different and unique shells and things that it wants to do. So many different ways to take it that you can maybe sort of mirror what I've done in a new set that comes out that you really care about. So I am just going to jump right into it. So the first thing that we want to do when we're looking at a big, wide set 2, like Assault Lily Volume 2, is that we're going to look back before we look forward to all the new stuff. So what did Assault Lily do really well? What were like the standout things people knew Assault Lily for? Like, what did people think about when they thought of Assault Lily? So I've sort of narrowed it down to these 3 things. That's number 1, obviously, of course, the insane finishing power, the Ryu top end, where you mill 18 cards out of your opponent's deck, you attack 4 times, you do a bunch of Icy Tails in instances of 3, can kill as low as 2/2/2/3. It's absolutely insane. That's probably the biggest thing that people think about right now, especially if you follow the Japanese meta. That's sort of what almost all their builds center around that you see popping up on Twitter and stuff like that. They're all pretty much Ryu top end stuff because that's what they value, that it can just sort of nuke your opponent before your opponent even gets a chance to play their end game, which is really, really cool, and it is very effective. The other thing that it does that's really awesome that people like is the board break. So the level 1 Yuja that nukes level 0s, the Shenlong that levels things down, and of course the event that further levels things down and adds some selectivity. That's something that it did really well. It had a lot of bombs to support it, and we're going to look into that as well going forward. The other big thing, the Yuri plus docking engine, the Yuri climax combo, that if you only really play English and like that, it's very similar to the Jean. So obviously you compare that with blind stalkers like the Shenlong from the TD, but let you get searches, selective pluses, as well as generate stock, and that was really good at ensuring you had all those resources to do your crazy finisher every game. So that was another thing that did really well. It played that strategy of having just sort of a climax combo that can chill in your back row or be promoted to front row and is effective in both situations, where you could sort of back row shuffle and not be punished for it, or just have things sit in the back row all game and just every time you drew a book you would go get a search, get a bunch of power. So those are all the things that Assault Lily did really, really well, and things that we're going to look to exemplify or add into the new stuff. So speaking of the new stuff, a lot of new build-around packages. We got the choice stuff, where it's all that resonate, all that good stuff. We'll get into that, as well as the Hervar stuff, but it's all the blue stuff, the Kazuha that comes out, can come out early, all that great stuff. Other big thing, so important for the set, greatly improved utility and sculpting tools. We got good dot searches, good ditch outs. We got an awesome Ricky. I'm going to get into that very in depth. And then, of course, really good new level 1 combos to try. Level 1 combos, level 1 options for Assault Lily were never too great. You either played the Yuja or you played the Yuri. The 1/0 UU had like some problems because before we didn't have good utility, but now we do. So there's a lot of stuff to test. Other big thing that Assault Lily got that is brand new, it's sort of like a new era of power creep stuff, is the crazy slot efficient profiles. So cards that do 2 radically different things that would require somewhere between 2 to like 6 slots to get both effects. You now just only have to play 1 card. So you have this Yo here, this level 0, which is like a 500 global, and it has a repeatable act where you can pay 1, discard a climax, and tap it to salvage a different climax. But it's a permanent climax swap. That profile's never existed before, so that's brand new. Obviously, the Renka Brainstorm, absolutely insane. It's a tap 2 search Brainstorm, which is but the other thing on it is every turn you don't Brainstorm, you tap 2 Lily characters, and you choose a character on your board, and you give it on reverse blind stock. So it's yet another blind stocking engine. They can target any card. You don't have to run a specific card to turn on a stock gen engine. It's just stapled to your Brainstorm. That's sick. Obviously, the Ron, everybody who's seen anything about Assault Lily Volume 2, this card's nuts. The 4 more early play heal. It's also 10k if you have experience 4, and has cross turn, pay 2 on reverse burn 1. So it's an off finisher, an early play healer in 1, where the only downside is you have to hit like experience requirement, which even in decks where you're not playing all the crazy blue stuff is super easy to hit. So that's sick. And then you also have this other pair card that goes with the Hervar engine, where it's a 1/0 combo that is just reveal top, add a character. You see it? Add any Lily, as well as a level 2 killer. It's also 6k. So that pairs well with the Yuri and a bunch of other stuff. So you have all these 2 things on 1 card for not a lot of downsides. And I think this is sort of going to be a marker of how new strong White Schwartz cards are going to be designed where they're going to be very slot efficient. They're going to combine multiple different strong effects that you would otherwise have to dedicate somewhere between 4 to 8 slots to run those effects effectively in your decks into one card where you just run 3 to 4 of it and you're done. Sometimes even 2 of it if you have a lot of selectivity and stuff. So how I approach testing is, number one, I'm going to look at all the new stuff, all the new shells, all the new combos, all the new stuff that we want to play. We're going to play that with like very minimal old stuff, only the stuff that we really need, stuff that wasn't in just set 2, because we want to try that stuff as it stands and then see how it works with the old stuff, because we're going to try to support those old strategies. So we have like the board break, we have the Yuri stuff, we have the big crazy Ryu top end. We want to vet that stuff too, because that stuff was previously really strong. We have all these new tools. We want to bring those together and create brand new, very powerful lists that mix all these crazy tools to make super strong decks that combine these super unique auctions that Assault Lily has. So jumping into the new stuff proper, we are going to start with the 1-0 Riri combo. This one turned heads. People said it was the laziest, freest level 1 combo ever printed, and to be honest, I have to agree. So the package is just a level 1 and a level 3 combo that happen to be on the same door, and what happens is on climax placement, you just go salvage a card, and it gives all your other characters 1k. So if you play triple of this, they're 8k, and they're on climax placement salvage. That has some pretty cool benefits if you're at low deck and you have to climax combo because you need to refill hand, and you don't have to worry about your climax going back, or you don't care, you're in that kind of game state. You just play it on the climax and salvage for however many you have in the front row, which is really nice. And it's very simple. It's just this. The other thing, you probably play like one of the U top end if you played at all. But what is kind of weird is the way that red works out in Assault Lily when you aren't playing standby is that all the red cards that you run in your deck are either your level 0s that you want to play, or this level 1 that you want to play at level 1, or like maybe some tech cards, drop searchers or stock swap, stuff like that. So what do you do to level? You're kind of running really lean on red for a combo that you want to play at 1. It can get a little awkward. It's not too bad. Modern decks can get away with playing very low counts of even primary colors with so many consistency options that you have, but is something to note is it can get a little bit hairy. It's very awkward when the only red in your deck is your runner and your combo and a bunch of auxiliary cards that you don't want to level. So that can get a little weird. The other weird thing with this one is that the UU combo at the top, it's like a 1-lane, pay a bunch of like stock, pay a bunch of hand, does like a double burn 4 where you stack a card on top. It's really good actually for like a single lane combo and what it's doing. But a double combo like this, Assault Lily doesn't actually have a good level 2 combo to sort of take advantage of. So it's not like Thou Alicization, right? It had like the Kirito 2-1, right? Where the Kirito would sort of fuel your mid game that you could play crazy top end because you could switch around and stuff like that. But there's nothing that you get for like opening up that space for playing like, okay, this is going to be my primary level 1. This is going to be my primary sort of top end with some off finishers. And then I'm going to play a really good level 2, but you don't have a really good level 2 to pair it with. Also, it's really expensive even for 1 lane. So there's some other super crazy stuff you can do in Assault Lily for the same, if not less resources or easier to gather resources. So does that sort of thing, the double combo, not really much of a feather. There's not much to do with it. The other thing, the pump that it gives, that global 1k when you put the climax down, that's still going to need a pair card, similar to how Yuri works, where you want to put a big beater or a card that has some other effect where you can give the power, beat over a big lane, and move on with your life and put a challenge standby and stuff like that. When you have to include those additional cards with this, the benefit of this kind of goes down when you compare it to Yuri, because Yuri also more easily runs the stock gen engine, can sit in your back row all game. You don't have to have it up there and have it die because it's 5k. Even with like an act package, I tried that out, trying to save this card, trying to have it win cross turn 5k and some backup stuff. Didn't really make it any better than playing into them. Not exactly a benefit there either for this combo. Other weird thing about this, this might be a little bit strange for some of you. Most people might not value this, but you have a lot less info about the game state when you salvage on your climax placement. So because you have to do your salvages up front before you know how much damage your opponent takes, that like you might say, oh Carmen, like it's 1 lane on reverse, what if I have to do my reverse first, what do I have to do then? However, with Yuri, when a card like Yuri in your set exists, where you can stack multiple searches, multiple selected pluses at the end of your attack phase, where you have more information, and you can save that card to the back row and has a bunch of other benefits, no, it's starting to fall off. And that's why, unfortunately, unfortunately, the reread in this set with the tools that Assault Lily has ends up being a little lackluster for most builds. A good combo, like a good modern White Schwartz combo, a good like selective plus is like a given, right? We expect level 1 combos to be selective, non-interactive, insane. They're the things that pull us to certain sets. They're the things that make us want to play certain cards outside of the characters and the shows that we like. We want to play these cool mid-game combos because they feel good, they are good, they're powerful, but they have to do something else. And when there are other combos in the set that do a similar or maybe slightly worse thing to this card, where all this card is a non-interactive selective plus, is that worth it? Because we're not getting any mill. We don't have the ability to save it and pull it to the back row. We can't stack all our searches on one lane, so we can call our shot or maybe win board or something like that. Or we can still win board, but it requires us to run extra cards, and the whole benefit of this card is that it's just 4 cards and we're done. So it just ends up being not a good fit for what Assault Lily has. If Assault Lily comes on the line with an extra boost or something crazy where there's some cracked level 2 combo or something where this card can really shine, or this card gets printed in some other set with this same effect, it'd be awesome, because there's no way I could say this card's bad. This card's amazing, as well as being tied to another level 3 finisher. But with the tools that Assault Lily had, I found out that this one, after extensive testing, did not pair well with almost any other shell as compared to the other combos, where we just slot one combo out, slot one out, put another one back in. It was always worse or more awkward, either for reasons of color or just how it worked out. I never wanted to play the UU. I always wanted to do my other combo because it was better. Similar resources. Even when the game went fast, it's like, hey, you ditch 4, 2 burn 4s. Like, if the game's going bad, my opponent's game's going good, they're probably compressed, probably won't even matter. I don't know. Just a weird fit for what the set has, and ended up eventually dropping it and moving on. So, moving on. Another combo. This one is just a Magro, but it's a Magro for level 1s and higher, and it's off choice, which is something that Assault Lily did not have previously. They did not have Yellow. Yellow is brand new to Volume 2. It also has a Brainstorm with an additional climax combo that goes with the same choice climax, or when you play it, you give 2 of your characters Twin Drive. Really good. Helps you pay out climaxes, helps you keep your stock clean. And another big thing with Assault Lily, deck speed, always a problem depending on what combo you use. So if you play this, you will always make sure that you get through your deck. It does force you to play Yellow, which isn't too difficult. A lot of the good new cards are Yellow, especially our Ricky, the most important card in the set. And it's the only non-invasive choice trigger you can add to your deck. So if you want to play a choice trigger along something like the Pants combo, which Chairman made a video on, which I'll have linked in the description, where he was playing choice pants, and that the choice, as he was saying, and you could see in the video, he was saying that it gave some extra stock generation for the heavy early play package without forcing him to run a stock gen engine. Opinions on stock gen engines, neither here nor there, but it is one of the only ways to add a choice to your deck that doesn't force you into playing the giant choice top end package, which we'll get into later. So it's got some good deck speed. Only grabs level 1 though. Can't add any of Assault Lily's really good new zeros, which I consider to be a pretty big problem with this card and a big reason that I like it. But it is one of the only ways to non-invasively add deck speed and a choice trigger, and you get this nice little Brainstorm that also has a soul trigger just as an extra bonus. But yeah, the combo's not bad. It gives you the deck speed. It depending on your build, might be something you want. Gives you the choice, might be something you want. But with the way Assault Lily decks work, Fury package with the level 1 Ron package, Resonate, deck speed isn't as much of an issue as it used to be. Before it was just like, it was literally just Shiri and Brainstorming. That's terrible. But even now, with the amount of times you're blind stocking and searching, or in other builds you're playing the event or stuff like that, Fury by itself, honestly, with the added deck slots that you have now, since sort of the abilities that you want to play have sort of condensed with those slot efficient profiles, the Fury alone is usually enough to get you through your first deck if you use it intelligently and you use it liberally. Sometimes having to Ricky for Fury or things like that to get you through your deck. In a set that has such good toolboxing, both at level 0 now, has really good like cheeky level 1 options depending on your build, really good tech cards at level 2, like they have that Uja 2-1 bomb, things like that, and really good like off level 3s as well. A combo with low selection that you only really use once to get through your first deck doesn't have a lot of value. And the Twin Drive, since you have good stockouts in the set as well, also isn't that useful. Only good in those situations where you're milling through your deck and you have to pay out right then, or the climax will be buried, which is nice, but if you have good stockouts, good ways to use that stock, doesn't really matter if you bury it, right? Because then you get a really good ability on your next turn. So you can see why I don't really think this one's the play. I think it's a totally fine card. I just think it doesn't really fit with what other shells want to do that much. I think the biggest reason you want to play this is that you're just like, man, deck speed, I'm sick of it. I want to rip through my first deck and I never want to deal with this again, which is valid. Sometimes that is what you want to do depending on what you're building. But for what I was interested in when I was testing, I never found a need for that amount of deck speed entirely. And honestly, not being able to grab the zeros, not that great. I don't think there's too many events that you'd want to add with this. You could like play the 1/0 blue event raw. In green builds, you could play this at level 1 and use it to add your blue 1 event. But like, why would you want to do that? Because that stuff all goes in one package. So very little reason to choose this one over any of the other options, both old or new. Moving into stuff that I did end up keeping. This 1/0 Ron is amazing. So it's a power creep Christmas Cosme profile. On Climax play, you salvage the Tornado event. So on play, go get as many events, as many runs as you have on board. It's also 8K with no other requirements other than having Experience 2 when you play the Climax. So when you play the Climax, it gets 1K. And then if you have Experience 2 plus, it's 6K base. So it's an 8K in its own lane. Same as the 1/0 Riri, but you're getting this event that helps toolbox you and gives you deck speed on follow-up turns. Or if you played it on the turn, went to go get this, the sort of classic Christmas Cosme play pattern, you mill your first deck, and then you go get all your events back, and then you have all your plus. So it's an infinite quote-unquote engine that always can get back its event, which can always get back this card where you played on the Climax and you get it back, and do that forever. The thing that's great about this, and I sort of mentioned it, is that it leverages all the new level 0 utility cards super well. And that's because Tornado events always at base exchange for level 0s. So for every 1/0 you play, you get selectively a level 0 from your grave at minimum or higher. And then you also have a lot of ditch outs in that toolbox where you can take a card, event being a card, and maybe you don't want to play it, you don't want to mill your deck, to turn those into other effects. So you have drop searchers, you have the double bonder if you're playing the choice package, you have that Riri that can sack itself and discard any card to salvage any Lily character from your grave. So you have ways to turn that event, if you don't want to play it and you don't want to beat on your new deck, into effects, which is really important when you're playing a profile like Christmas Cosme and you don't want to just destroy deck December and absolutely destroy your brand new deck because you cancel at the top or something. But it does give you that option. So this combo combined with some other stuff does give you the best deck speed, I think, in the set, because it's something that you can use on demand, either by having the event first, then getting this back and playing it, or playing the event afterward. And helps you hit good refresh timing, just like the Magro that we just looked at. And it has good synergy with the Resonate and the Chieri. Chieri is a level 1 or higher, so you can grab the event, which then grabs this. So it's like a 7-card mill when you hit event off Chieri, which is super awesome for getting through your first deck. Only bad thing, this does eat up 8 deck slots all by itself, because you have 4 runs and you have 4 events. Best way to play it. You could try to shave down to 3 events, but card's got to be engraved. Probably going to hurt your consistency. And it also forces blue level 3 experience at 1. You either have to level a free fresh counter or a level 3 early play blue card. Or if you're playing the giant blue early play package, one of those to make sure this card works. So it forces that in your deck. That does make it deck build restrictive in decks that cannot support running those packages of cards, but the payoff, well worth it for that toolbox, that deck speed. This card is super simple, but it's super effective. If you have the deck slots to support it, it can be a force in any build. It's been paired with, I've seen it paired with everything. I played it with Dora, played it with Choice. I've even played it with Bar. You can play it with anything. Okay, Choice package. This one was super talked about in the spoiler season, talking about new cards. It is a brand new super nut style finisher, just like the Riri Yu, where you build up a bunch of resources and then you blow it all and you do a ton of attacks and a ton of extra damage. But the thing with this one, compared to Riri Yu, that has some very distinct benefit. It digs for its own Climax. This Konoha on play picks up the top 5 and adds any card, so it digs you into your Climax. Typically, you'll have 1 check 4 and then the second 1 check 5, so you're going to dig 9 into your Climax. Good consistency. It also does guaranteed damage versus Icy Tails. Icy Tails are very high variants. I've written about it before when I was talking about pre-Volume 2 Assault Lily, before we got any spoilers that came out. When your opponent mills clean bottom 3 multiple times, it can be terrible. So the fact that this does guaranteed instances of damage, 5 attacks, 2 burns, each of the burns for 2, you're pushing a lot of damage. That's a lot of reach. And it's pretty achievable too, because these 2 cards have a resonator. It's a union resonator. So you tap it, reveal the Konoha, reveal up to top 3 at any Lily, and then you can reveal the Takane at the beginning of your Climax phase, which is the burner, to give any of your characters 2K. So you get this power pump and good modular deck manipulation with guarantee pluses that make the hand-intensive finisher super viable. Because a common case for this is 2 of each. So if you have 2 of each, you're going to need a full hand at the beginning of your turn. The Konohas are going to refund themselves. Then you play the Climax, you play these down. If you had to play an additional card, that makes it go up by 1. If you had to play an additional card by hand, and you play 2 Konohas down, they refund themselves, and then you play the Climax. The Konohas are going to pop back to your hand after you ditch 2. Then you're going to spawn the Takane from your hand in each lane, and then the Takane has to resonate the Konoha like the Kaguya in Kaguya Love's War, so you can't resonate the Konoha and then ditch it, but that makes it go up again. So it ends up being like 10 hand raw. It's not as expensive as it sounds. You do got to watch your hand thresholds to make sure that you're able to do it. If you trigger any choices or anything in there, which is pretty nice, you can add either stock or hand depending on what you're missing. If you unfortunately screwed up and you didn't count right or something like that, so you do have a little bit of a safety net because you're attacking so many times. But if you want to get the 5 attacks and the 2 burns, it is 6 stock and 10 hand raw. Obviously, there's cards bouncing back to your hand and stuff like that, but because you have the resonate, the Kano, it is end cards. Other thing with this is it's going to eat 12 deck slots right off the bat. Most effectively to run this, you're going to need 4 Kanoho, 4 Takane, 4 Resonator. You can shave off a single Kanoho and a single Resonator if you want to get greedy, but that's still 10. So before you've done anything, you're down 12 to 10 cards, which depending on build, depending on what you want to do, might not be what you're looking for. Because you need both of these level 3s in your hand early to make the Resonator as good as it can be, that can get kind of clunky if your games go really fast or they're not going super well, because you want to have these in early so that you can take advantage of that buff, get those free pluses, but then you're playing on a, you know, you're a -2 card hand because you got to have these level 3s that don't do anything other than resonate chilling in your hand. It's not too bad because you don't need to have it sort of on demand at level 0 or level 1, but by your first level 1 turn, you want to have these in your hand for sure, and your Resonator is your best stock out too, so it can get a little clunky if things aren't going too great. And this does incentivize that you play double Resonator back row. This is best played and most effective when you have 2 of the Kanoho Resonators in the back, and you're either tapping down 1 or 2 of them each turn to get free cards, or just handing out like 4k power. So you're not going to have space for supports to win board cross turn or a brainstorm, a traditional brainstorm. So you're going to be all in on that Resonator to take advantage of it, which, depending on what you want to do, might not fit. Okay, other brand new package, the Hervar package. It is a really big group of cards that focus on the mid game, so level 2 and forward. It's an early play chain where you play one, play another, because that's on the board. You can play another that can bring out your Kazuha burner at level 2. So you get a heal, and then on a climax placement, you give a character on your board on attack, pay 1, discard 1, burn for that card's level. So it's usually a pay 1, ditch 1, burn 3, which is really efficient for being an on attack, just non-interactive climax combo, and you can turn it online at level 2. Now that's not quite Symphogear level, but being able to push extra damage earlier can catch a lot of people off guard, can force people to play in certain ways that maybe bleed their resources to make sure their deck is in an optimal state to sort of cancel finisher turns they're not otherwise prepared for, depending on the matchup, and it can be really nasty. And the reason you're able to keep doing this, because this Yo 3 back row, red one over here to the left, blind stocks when you either play the early play Ron, which we talked about earlier, or the Kazuha finisher. So your early play Rons and your Kazuha finisher each cost 1 stock. So after you have the Yo down on the board once, that's going to like snowball really quickly. So on the first turn, you do everything like 5 stock. You get all 4 level 3s out on your board at level 2. But on your follow-up turns, where the Yo's already on the board, you're playing Rons for 1, your Renka's spawning your Kazuha's to overall for 3, or actually overall for 2. Since the Renka comes down, you pay 1, the Kazuha comes out from your grave, and then you blind stock. So it can get out of control really quickly, and because it's so efficient, it makes it so that you can continue to heal down or push for damage depending on what the situation calls for. So you're at high level 2, you just keep spamming heals, keep it down. If you happen to draw a pants, you can slam it down, burn, and then still expect to be able to play down more early plays and burn on follow-up turns. Really cool. The finisher is very simple, but because it is so efficient, it's going to allow you to more easily use defensive counters after you've already comboed, starting from level 2. So obviously have the free fresh counter, have Bracelet, which is the -3 soul in 1 lane event that Assault Lily has access to. Other defensive counters that you might want to play, you can play those freely, maybe even multiple times per game, without it hurting your strategy that much. Obviously, taking a -3 to stock when you're trying to do other things is always not going to feel great, but you can emergency like eject yourself out of a bad deck state and still, you know, hope to be in a winning position the following turn, which is something that only this shell can really pull off. I think hitting that emergency button in any of the other big finisher shells or anything like that really sets you too far behind to do much on a follow-up. Sometimes you're forced to do it, obviously, and this is White Schwartz. Bad things happen. We're put in bad situations and have to play ourselves out all the time. But with this package, you can more freely use defensive counters and expect to have good follow-ups. There's also a lot of other package-specific payoff cards. So you have the double combo. We talked about that before. It's a level 2 killer and on-attack top check draw. And then you have this really cool double climax filter where you trigger a book. You can discard any card and salvage, so it turns your books into doors. And then when you trigger pants, you can pay 1, pay out the pants, blind stock, and then draw ditch. So you can filter stuff out of it and pay out the pants so you're not burying it too. Really, really cool. Main problem with this package is that it eats your entire deck. This is a lot of cards. This is like 4 finishers, 4 run early plays, 2 to 3 yo back rows, 2 to 3 Renkas, somewhere between 2 to 3 of this off level 1 combo, depending on what you're pairing it with, or maybe just as a tech card, and then probably 2 of the support too, if you're also playing a book level 1. And it also is going to force you to have experience 6 at 2, kind of like South 10th, where it was much more convenient for them to just slam experience 6 at 2. And because the Kazuha has an experience 6 requirement, and you want to be able to threaten pushing that damage at 2, it's going to be important for you to have 2 level 3s in your level on your first level 2 turn. So you have to make sure that you're on top of that, and you have to build your deck to hit that experience requirement. So you're going to lose a lot of your deck really, really quickly to be able to play this. But depending on what you want to do and what your build is trying to do, what you are building your deck for, that might be something that either doesn't matter or you value this so much that it's just whatever and you build your whole deck around it. So it depends mostly on your build, which is a good thing because we don't want all these new shells to be so restrictive that we can't mix them with any of the other cool stuff, right? Which thankfully something with Assault Lily, even with these brand new, really big new card packages that we can still do. We still fit in a lot of our old tech, a lot of our cool tech cards. Moving into our more generalized new tools, and thank God we have them. The most important new card in this set, the Kanaho Riki. This is everything that Assault Lily ever wanted. It is a True Search Riki. Go into your deck after you pay 1, punch yourself in the face, and go get a level 1 or lower, add it to your hand. True Search Riki also has an insane other effect. Discard a character, draw a card. So if you think about it, this is a Riki. It gets you your level 1 combo that filters heavy cards you can't play out of your hand to dig you closer to your climax. You don't already have it. And the way you usually play this card is you'll ditch draw first. Who knows what you draw? Maybe you just randomly draw the level 1 combo you're looking for, which then opens you up to maybe grabbing other utility cards, maybe grabbing a Chiiri, maybe grabbing something else, or just drawing into your climax. Maybe you were going for just a raw plus for an auxiliary card because you didn't think you would get your climax, and then you do, and then, you know, it could change your play patterns at level 0. So it's an amazing, amazing Riki. There's a reason this card has spiked in value for base rarity. It's ridiculous. It's everything the set wanted, because Assault Lily, as I've been on record before saying, the worst problem before set 2 was that we had no good sculpting tools from 0 into 1. We had a vanilla drop search, and that was it. Obviously Shenlong Riki is great, but it's random cards off the top of the deck, and Kanaho just fixes that straight away. No problem. Another card that comes in super clutch, again, Assault Lily didn't have a good drop search, now they do. This is a normal drop search, and then on play also reveal top, give a character 1k, so it has a little bit of extra utility there, gives us some top deck knowledge. Obviously you see a climax on top, then you can brainstorm. Opens up some lines just with any other normal top check would do, but any other good filtering card in obviously a relevant color. Most builds splash red for any number of either utility cards or finishers, so really important for the set to get a good drop search. This one, haven't seen too many builds run it, but it is a really good card. It's a back row runner, and then you can sack it and discard any card to salvage any Lily character. So it is a stock-free selective salvage, selective filter card, that also functions as sort of like your 5th runner, your 5th opening card. Really, really cool. They also got a Rico filter, so on play, discard any card, reveal top, salvage that card level or lower. Best costless filtering profile that could possibly exist. The other effect is kind of like niche, but if your triggering climax is going over hand, you can discard any card to have this card twin drive, so it stock charges 1, sort of like a hand to stock mid battle phase. So kind of useful, kind of not, but an on play Rico, no matter its second effect, is probably worth playing if you have the slots for filter. Then this one, another drop salvage, so we're not forced to run a drop salvage that mills on play if we don't want to. That old green one, it is the normal salvage, give a character 1k, and then it also has a cool anti-standby text where if your opponent has a character in their back row that's higher than their current level, like they hit something standby to back row next turn, you just stun it. It can't stand. Pretty rude for a card that you could throw in just to fix for color as a filter card, which is always really nice. There are other filter cards that were added in the set. This is just a small selection, the most important ones being the Riki and the drop search, and everything else just sort of being icing on the cake, as it would be. But the big thing, and I alluded to it before, now that we have these 2 block plus options, the new Kanaho Riki and obviously the old Shenlong bomb, which if you're not familiar with it is a level 0 clock bomb that on death you pay 1 clock yourself, check top 2, add any characters you find there, so it can be a +2. Which one do we play? Before Volume 2 came out, sculpting from 0 to 1, that's all it was abysmal. It was the main reason you would lose a lot of games if games didn't go well in the early game, because Shenlong either revealed like a climax, 2 climaxes, only +1, gave you junk cards. You didn't have a way to sculpt those into better cards. You were just trying to rip as many cards off the top as possible and then fuel those into Chiuri for like traditional dig to sort of get into your level 1 pieces. But now that we have a true selective search Ricky, don't need to do that anymore. We don't need to deal with that. So because Konoho automatically fixes that problem and it draws into our climax combos, we're going to prefer to play Konoho in pretty much every build that's not running the Yield Nuke package, the Board Break package, because obviously Shenlin is a level 0 bomb, as level 0 zone bombs are not limited by cost or anything like that. They're by level, unique to them. If we level things down to level 0, we can kick like 1/1s and stuff to clock, which is really, really rude and really, really important for that deck. So outside of the Board Break strategies, we're probably going to play Konoho in most builds. If we do have the space, we can try to play both. I've tested and seen many builds play like 4 Konoho to Shenlin, sometimes even flipped it around if they're playing the Board Break stuff, 4 Shenlin to Konoho, just to sort of play 6 Rickies, which can be pretty insane depending on your build. If you don't really care too much about stock and what you're doing, you can play the Shenlin level 0 and then also play the new drop search and the new filter cards to sort of have your filtering happen outside of just your Ricky. Your sculpting from 0 to 1 happen just outside of your 1 card. But because the Konoho is so efficient, we just usually play 4 of it. It gets the card that we want. Then we're not spending extra slots and extra stock to get the cards we need just to play the Shenlin bomb. We can play 1 card, call it done, as it is amazing at finding our pieces at level 0 for level 1 or at extra cards at 0, as well as giving us extra draws in either more utility or our climax. So we're going to prefer Konoho in pretty much all cases. We're still going to have to use a lot of old utility. Volume 2 doesn't have everything, nor should it. So there are old cards that you're definitely going to want to look at no matter what build you are playing. Very tried and true utility cards or cards that Volume 2 didn't bring anything new for. So we're going to have to play the Chiuri. It's the only costless mill in Assault Lily. We need to play it. Most builds usually run 3 because, again, if you're not playing the Maguro or you're not playing the Ron level 1, you're going to have trouble getting through your deck. So most builds are going to play the at least 2, usually 3 Chiuri. Climax Swap top 2 rearrange is a tried and true profile. It is extremely good at both confirming not only your lines on the turn that you're going for finishers because it looks at your top 2 cards, or just shows you in the mid game if you could brainstorm or something like that, or informs your triggers. Super, super abusable effect. The fact that you can just top 2 rearrange stable to another good utility card, which is Climax Swap for confirming your climax combos. The Kaide package, I am a huge proponent of including this in decks that can support it, is the Global 5 with tap 2 salvage, really nice 2-card stock out, as well as another effect. If you are at level 2 or higher, you can pay 1, discard any card, and sacrifice this Kaide, summon the TD Riri on play, check X, and an off finisher effect on attack, pay 2, discard any card, burn 1. That gives you good CX dig into finishers that do not cantrip, so it's a good Hail Mary for your climax, or just good extra little bits of deck speed to get through your first deck since it only comes out for 1. Also lets you play the Riri without color. You're in some sort of weird state where you don't have red, you're trying to float red, or red isn't something you're still level 3. You don't have to worry about having red, play TD Riri at level. You get a cheap off finisher, CX assurance, and a Global 5 assist that also has a pay 2 stock out, and you only need to run like 2 Kaide and 1 Riri. Do it consistently in the games you want to when you're playing select the level 1 combos. Very good package, and like I said, any deck that can support it, I am a huge proponent of running it. Best hand fixing option in green is still the Yuja drop salvage, and it's still a great card. Mills 2 on play, hit a climax, neg something 1k, and then the normal drop salvage plus something 1k. Really good small green splash filter card. We're still going to see this come up in a lot of builds. It's really useful, not only for color splash and as just a filtering. The Fumi Brainstorm, still an amazing card. Lets you peek at top card of your deck, both at the beginning of your main phase and at the beginning of your climax phase. You get 2 times to see your top trigger. Really important for builds running Yuja, because you can look and see if it's a level 1 or higher card. If you can go on your first attack, or you should delay it on your second attack. So any deck where we're not going to play the broken new Renka Brainstorm, or we need certain color, we're still going to play Fumi because it's a great card. Speaking of the Renka, you now have 3 different stock gen engines in Assault Lily. You have the Renka Brainstorm, so anytime you don't brainstorm, you tap 2 cards and give any card blind stock. You have this brand new Tazasa, which is a 6k on drop, and then on reverse, if you have a climax in play, blind stock. And then of course you still have the old TD Shenlin, which where you have to tap a card only on the turn it's played when that card gets a reverse. You have to have a standing card in the background. So because Renka is actually so overloaded, he's pretty much gonna replace TD Shenlin, because in the situations where you want to have a card standing in your back row to tap it, it's usually never going to be an issue that you wanted to like brainstorm, then tap something down that was standing in the back row. Like you're gonna have 2 cards in the back row that you need to have to tap, whereas before you had a card that you wanted to tap to brainstorm, then another standing card to tap, which wasn't attacking. So it's typically never going to come up, and because of that, and because of after a lot of testing, comparing both Renka and the TD Shenlin, the Renka, even with no other specific pair card, was always better because it was also also a Brainstorm, and it also opened up slots in your deck. So the benefits are too high to pretty much play the TD Shenlong anymore. You could still probably do it in very specific builds, but the Renka is just miles and away too good to not be playing if your build can support it. Because you have the Renka, you can further play the Tazusa and get 2 blind stocks in one turn, alongside things like the level 1 Yuri Climax combo package, where you can have cards in the back row, you put your Yuri down, your Yuri's chilling in the back row, it's giving something search, you have tap 2 things down, you give the Tazusa blind stock, the Tazusa herself has blind stock, you're going +2 extra stock and searching 2 times or something crazy. It's a lot more normal than you'd think in the builds where you choose to run these packages. It is dual color, but it is something awesome that I wanted to bring up, and it's a lot more common than people think it can be. You can get those double blind stock turns, sometimes even multiple times per game without too much issue. It's very, very similar to the old play pattern that the Book Door deck that was very, very popular used to do. It's the same dual color, has the same requirements for things on your board, has even less requirements for what cards you need in your hand. You get 2 blind stocks and the same amount of searches as the old deck. So it's just all upsides here. And the great part about all of this is that no matter what build of Assault Lily you are playing, you can likely support a stock gen engine. So no build of Assault Lily, if you're thinking, I'm not making enough stock, I think I need some way to generate extra stock to do what I want to do, you'll never have that problem. You can always modify your deck build to fit one of these options in without destroying the rest of what you're doing, because the Renka is not very intrusive, the Tazusas and the Shenlong are completely standalone. You can always fit one of them in very, very easily if you are having stock issues. There are a couple other mainstay cards that we are still going to include in most builds of Assault Lily, no matter what. The big ones are the early play. So the 2 big early plays are the Tazusa, which is a mesmerizing Water Goddess profile, but it also has memory kick stapled to it, which can be super, super rude, good at just getting stuff off the board that you don't want to deal with, getting your opponent's standby cards with Encore off the board. No matter what, you have a lot of different buffs in Assault Lily, so you can throw this over anything with its high on-play power line. 4 or more, super solid early play. And then the Mai, which is the super general 2 or less early play heal, and then when it's front attacked, you can discard any card, pop it back to your hand, and heal again. Super splashable early plays, both green and blue. You throw in a deck very, very easy. Hit color to just play an early play, and you get those extra effects. Refresh counter. For every deck where we're not playing either the Magro or the level 1 Ron combo, we are going to need a deck speed patch, and refresh counter is it. When things go poorly, we need to have an emergency button to get us out of a bad deck. Refresh counter is always going to fulfill that role, and because of that, most builds of Assault Lily are opting to run 2, and I agree. If you don't have that good deck speed, it's a must and a good defensive counter to have. No matter the matchup, it will win you games you otherwise should never win, and it's important to have that option. The Yuri level 1 combo package, it's too good. Selective combo lets you stack all your reverses in one lane so that you can do it at the end where you have better knowledge what your opponent's going to be at for the next turn, and it got even more support, like I talked about. The Renka Brainstorm, the 1/0 Tazusa, additional pump cards. In fact, this card can chill in your back row. Back row shuffling is never a problem. Too good for what the deck wants to do, and it plays this type of card better than any other deck that's been out there, like a card that can either sit in your back row and you can promote it, and it's Imakai. It's just way too good, and it's going to show up in a lot of decks. That fact that you can get selective searches, repeat those selective searches every turn, and then also generate extra stock all at the same time. There's very few reasons to not be playing it, especially into a meta where people are playing for board, because the Yuri will break down boards and be paired with lots of other cards that also break down boards. The runner from the first set is too good. It is a big runner. It runs away. It's 3K. If you don't have this and you don't want to shell out the money to get it because it has spiked to insanity, you can play the new Fumi Chaser. When it's not your turn, it is a 3500 level 1 Chaser, 2K otherwise. Pretty comparable, works pretty well, but the 3K Avoider is just too good. Going to show up in also pretty much every deck as the primary plussing 0. These 3 cards, these level 3 toolbox cards, I love them to death. They're one of my favorite things about Assault Lily. The level 3 Yuja, which is a plus 5K on play, anti-event, anti-backup on attack, and then it can also, you card a Lily, you can spawn a card out of your clock. So it is a card that cheats a card onto the board, stops your opponent from messing with your battle step, and just gets massive. 3 very different role-playing effects on the same card. Very cool. The TD Riri, talked about it before. That's that second pink card there. And then, of course, the Fumi stock swap. That's the last one. Only real on-demand impression tool, if you even want to call the Fumi one on demand. It's on attack, but it also spawns a card. So you have all these different toolboxing cards that have multiple different effects, but it's like only 2 to 3 cards. You pick the ones that fill the holes in your deck, and then you have a level 3 toolbox to play with. These cards, in either all 3 of them at once or a subset of them, usually 2 of them, can fulfill like 6 to 8 different endgame effects in just those 2 to 3 cards, which is really, really cool, and it's very effective. It's going to remain effective in our new builds. So now I am going to get into the deck list proper. We are going to talk about the board break stuff first. I am playing the Fumi Chaser in this deck, specifically to show that you can play the Fumi Chaser or the Q Runner runner. Doesn't matter too much. New runner is just generally better into the current meta, but the chaser's still good. So yeah, we're gonna run this down pretty quickly, and I want to get to the overview because it is mostly the same. If you've seen some of my talk on the bar shell before, it's gonna look pretty much almost the same. There are very few new cards. The standout ones are this Yuja, which gives your center lane on attack surveil, so it helps your Yuja level 1 combo hit, as well as being a on play of bar. You can block kick your opponent's card on reverse, so it can get things off the board, which you didn't have too much trouble with anyway, but it's mostly there for that surveil effect to make sure it can hit. You now have a bonder for your 2-1 event. You have better access to that. Your selectivity goes up, which we don't really need door too much anymore. Also helping with that is this new 1-0 Yuja, which works like the bar filter from Saikono, where on attack, it gives itself and every other card, when you trigger a bar, discard a climax, salvage a card. So it helps us, gives it that selectivity, means we don't have to play it with the reread door anymore, but I was a big advocate of, just because that extra selectivity helped when Yuja would whiff. But now that we have extra assurance for not only the Yuja whiffing, but also being able to get our 2-1 event, which is our main way of selectivity way back when, as well as general discard a climax filter mid-combat phase for selective salvages, we can very firmly say that playing a bar is probably more effective because it plays into our aggressive game plan. We're going to blow up our opponent's board pretty much every turn. Then we hit the end game, we're going to play the Shenlong finisher, which pushes a ton of damage. Pay 2, ditch 2, burn 2, block kick, pushes a lot of damage. But yep, we're still running all the other stuff. The level down, we gotta level stuff down to 0, so Yuja can pop it, or our Shenlong bomb or our Riri bomb can reverse it, and then those cards hard remove things from field. Yada yada yada. Talked about this package a lot. If you want more information on it, I will point all to the old bar door video that I talked about, where I also talk about 8-bar at the end, just to give you guys a more in-depth of sort of how this deck works. But the long and the short of it is, it works pretty much the same. It just works better. But an overview on the board break stuff. The new support cards let you cut red. Like I said, Riri, we were only playing for the door. The event bonder and the bar filter, that's enough selection. We don't need the door to sort of shore up getting the cards we need. And that level 0 Yuja in junction with the Fumi Brainstorm, make sure that we hit our top checks more consistently. So it's gonna bust down standby pretty much no matter what. Standby's life is hell when you're playing this shell, or any list that's trying to plus on board. You're just gonna blow them apart every single time. But unfortunately, the board break package still has the same problem. So you're gonna still struggle against skilled players that are playing more non-interactive 1k1 style strategies. All they have to do is hold back their Brainstorm or important support cards so that you can't nuke them at critical junctures, and it's gonna fall off really quickly outside of like early rounds of Swiss at like a big style event kind of thing. It's just not good. If people aren't puking cards onto the board when they're playing 1k1 decks, you're not going to get too much value off of Yuja, because even with these new additions, 1-0 Yuja is still an inconsistent plus. You are top checking for a level 1 or higher card when you only have very few ways, even with F to firm, that you are hitting level 1 or higher cards on passive attack. So at the end of the day, you are banging on your opponents having a worse game than you because you are popping their Brainstorms and other things so they cannot reuse them again, versus Yuja whiffing and you just not having any cards. So a little bit of give and take there, and it doesn't usually go in your favor. And because Assault Lily has these other ways to deal with boards, notably Yuri, the new 1-0 Riri, you have these other cards that can easily be played in other builds to challenge standby. There's not as much of a reason to go this all-in route because it's so expensive. You don't generate enough resources to play other top ends or play even any other cards because the package takes so much away from what you're trying to do. There's not much reason to play it. Moving on to Pant's Choice, we're going to play the new Choice package in its entirety with this deck. You're going to see this in pretty much every deck here. You're going to see 4 Kanaho, 4 Runner, and some number of Chiri. Pretty much every deck. And this deck is no different. We're going to play the good Ricky, get our level 1 combo, get our other pieces, good Runner, control the board, run away from our opponent's even bigger cards, 4 Resonator, that we can always have double Resonate every game so that we can abuse those awesome effects. 2 Chiri, we have the Resonator for consistent deck speed, return, good modularity, so we're only going to be playing 2. We can also get it back a lot easier in deck because of the 1-0 combo. And then we have a level 0 toolbox. We have the double Bonder, which lets us pitch any 2 cards to get either the Takane, the Kanaho, or both. The Riri, that we can sack her and discard any card to salvage any Lily character, so we get something big if our 1-0 event that we grab doesn't mill enough characters, mills Climax, we can't grab it. Climax swap, of course, consistency card, and of course drop Search, which is going to show up in pretty much every build as well. 4 1-0 Ron combos, the 1-0 Ron that challenges Standby, the level 2 killer, the 1-1 Adachi, which we can discard a card to salvage one of our 1-0 events, which is a cool bonus effect. One of the free fresh counter, since we have that little bit of extra deck speed, we don't need touch on it as much. And then the full finisher package, 4 Takanes, 4 Kanahos, 4 of the 3-2 Ron early play because it is the best blue early play to satisfy our Ron 1-0s experience, and then 1 of the Fumi stock swap because sometimes we stock swap and it decompression tool that Assault Lily has access to on demand. So I talked about pretty much every card in this build already as we were going through the video, but we'll jump right into the overview. So the great thing about this deck is that it does not rely on a brainstorm. Tap down the resonate every turn multiple times per turn if you do for free pluses, and then of course you're handing out extra power. Your runs hit really good power lines. You can hit 10k, 12k lanes with costless cards, even without the 2/2 killer card, just pumping it with double resonate. It's really sick. It does have the best on-demand deck manipulation of any deck in the set by a mile, because you have the 1-0 event, which you can either play on turn or you can play on the following turn, and then you have the resonate for moving through maybe less cards, because the tornado is always going to go 3, so you can sort of manipulate your deck in such a way that you always hit good refresh timing. So the level 0 toolbox and the access you have to it because of the event abuses the consistency of both engines. So because you have the event to get those level 0s, and then the resonate is giving you pluses and putting cards in grave, you can then grab additional cards with your event and then continue to filter from there. You have a lot of options on any given turn because you have such good access to cards in your grave because of your toolbox, and it's very consistent. And then because of the choice trigger and because your top end is so stock light, you only need 6 to double, you don't need an additional stock gen package. So you save some space, you get to expand your toolbox, and it doesn't clash with the large slot requirements for both these combos. Like we said, you got to run so many cards to play the choice package, you got to run a full 8 cards at level 1 to play the Ron, and because you don't have to fit in an additional like 3 to 4 stock charging cards, and you don't have to play a brainstorm, you have all this extra space to not only play the toolbox but play both of the engines in their entirety. You don't have to shave off cards, you don't have to shave off resonators, you don't have to shave off Kanahos, you don't have to shave off events. You can play everything at 4, the everything very consistent every single time. Obviously, because of this though, you lose 24 deck slots before you make any other card choices, so it's hard to fit some additional tech. There are other level 0s that you'd want to run in that toolbox, but you know, we only have somewhere with 4 to 5 slots to do it with. It's even hard to fit the stock swap, which I think is a necessary card in pretty much any build of Assault Lily that isn't playing a deck breaking top end, just to have the option. Other thing, it doesn't play the Ron early play very well at all. Slap it down on the board, and because you don't have to worry about your stock too much, it's fine that it's not a stock killer. You don't have the color to support the stock killer, but it's just the best blue experience option. You could play the Maya in the slot too, but because the other one's 4 or more, and because we want to be able to run through our deck and stuff like that with the event, sometimes we can't really hit the condition. So it's just the best blue experience condition option that we have. And then of course, when you're playing a Christmas Cost Me style combo, Yuri and the Resonator help in ensuring that the events will be in your grave when you need them to be. But the fail case where your events are nowhere, or all of your level 1 combos are in deck and you have events and your events just don't mill level 1 combos, those can still happen. They are very rare, those safety nets in place, but it is something to bring up when you're talking about a combo that salvages a event. That's always something to consider when you are going to play that. And then of course, I touched on it before, because you want to have the 3-2 resonate targets in your hand, and then you're also adding all the 1-0 events to your hand. Although those events do exchange for any card on follow-up turns, it's going to create some hand juggling that has to happen, because you want to have both 3-2 resonate targets, and then you have a bunch of events that you have to play to mill to get cards and stuff like that. It can get a little awkward sometimes. With the amount of deck manipulation that you have, it never gets too bad where it would be a super big detractor from playing the deck, but it's something to keep in mind if you're going to pilot both these packages tandem, is you're going to have some awkward hand situations you might have to deal with sometimes, because you're adding these events that need played, and then you have to have the 2 different resonate cards for your resonator effects. Moving on, book pants. So now we are getting into decks that use and abuse the Yuri stock gen option, both not only generate extra stock, but also selective pluses to then do something really cool with it. So again, 0 line is going to look very familiar. 4 Rickies, 4 runners, 3 Chiris this time because we need that little bit of extra deck speed, because typical of any Yuri engine. 3 of the Renka Brainstorm, so that is our general stock charge for this deck. 2 of the on-play Rico, because we are all search, so having some nice salvage is always nice. A CX swap, always good. And then the blue drop salvager, just because we are in blue and it gives us, you know, a little bit of extra grave access. Level 1, 4 Yuris, 3 of the off level 1 combo, because not only is this going to be a secondary level 1 combo that we can play, it is also going to be our Yuri pair card, because it is 6k base. So we have our pair card and additional level 1 climax combo all in one card. We have 2 level 1 combo options that are both very potent and one that works together with the other. The Yo double climax filter, very important for a deck that is blind stocking and stuff like this. When you trigger climax on first attack, can be very debilitating. Get into that later. 2 free fresh because of our package at level 2 and forward lets us abuse defensive counters. And then getting into level 3, which is actually mostly all level 2s, 4 Kazuha climax combo, 4 Ron early play, 2 Renka that spawn your Kazuha, and then 2 Yo, which can be played if the Ron is in your level. You play down the Yo, then you play down the Ron, you blind stock, then you play the Renka, you pull out the Kazuha, and then get another blind stock. So 5 stock, you have 4 bodies, 2 blind stocks, and 2 kills. And you also have your finisher on board at 2. And then we've squeezed in 1 stock swap just to make sure that we have the option for depression, because Kazuha is dealing a larger chunk of traditional damage. Sometimes we need access to an on-demand decompression option that our opponent has to play on edge and can't sit on mountains of dock, deny us from being able to do anything. So getting into this one has a very resilient mid game and that leverages the Yuri and Renka resource generation to pull out these big bodies at 2, heal a lot, and then do that over and over and over again, either outlasting their opponent or pushing for game. The Ron and the Yo early play build gives like a really big board for low cost, and when the Yo's on board for multiple turns, it can snowball very, very fast. It's very loopable. Like every Yuri shell, you have that built-in pair card, like I talked about with the 1-0 Ron, where you not only have a double climax combo, but it's a 6k base. You buff it with the Yuri to 8k or 10k, and you're getting over whatever you need to, even with the climax down. Because we can bring out our finisher at 2, we can make extended pushes for game over multiple turns, and we can just sit there in our nice, pretty spot and heal over and over and over and burn when we see the opening rather than just pushing and pushing and pushing. However, we can do both depending on what the game state demands. Other big thing, I keep mentioning it, it plays defensive counters a lot more effectively than any other Assault Lily build. You are playing Door or you are playing Choice Top End, cannot free fresh and expect it to not hurt or game plan. This deck, you can free fresh at least once, maybe twice, and still expect to have potent follow-up turns that do not hurt your deck strategy. If you have these blind stocks, your deck's very, very efficient, starting from level 2 onward. There's a bad thing about this build, so it has the low deck speed problems that every Euro combo shell is going to have. Your deck speed is basically your blind stocks, your searches, brainstorms, Yuri, which is fine. That's not like bad. It's not anything that would stop anyone from playing these shells at all, because obviously there are a ton of upsides. Even if you don't hit refresh timing every single game, typically will. But there are so many different benefits. It kind of outweighs this, but it is something to note. It's important to recognize that you sometimes have to take lines to play down additional Chiris to make sure you get through your deck. It's not the normal, I opened one, I played one, I milled it, then my combo milled, and I'm out of my deck now. You have to play with a little bit more forethought to make sure that you are hitting the right refresh time. Other thing, the 1-0 Yo double climax support. That card is very important because it gives you grave access through the book filter part, and it pays out pants if you trigger pants on first attack every single time because you are bad like me. So because that card is down, you have an extra chance to pay out climaxes on first attack. Because you are blind stocking almost every turn with a deck like this, you want to be able to ensure as much as you can that you're not triggering a climax on first. Because if you do that, you're pretty much forced to bury it. And that could be really, really bad here at 0 and 1 because we don't have good stockouts until we hit our early play engine at 2, which is usually on second deck. So if we blind stock climaxes, they're just gone usually. And because our early play package is so potent, we'll take that gamble to like get that going, because once it's going, your opponent's going to have a hell of a lot of problems dealing with it. But because we do have poor stockouts, it's still our early play engine comes online. It's really rough to trigger DX on first attack. So the 1-0 Yo is really good for that, but the window that it's good is very, very small. It's like your level 1 combo turn into your level 2 stuff, because then the 3-2 Yo support comes down. You can promote it into other lanes and just swing it out because you have the 2k buff, you have other things going on, or in games where the game goes fast, it can help you sort of supplement a more normal mid game where you don't get the Yo out or things like that. But the window where it is super, super impactful is very, very short, but it's still a card that we need to play. So that's something. Also, early play game plan is very all in. We have to have experience 6 at 2, which means you have to level 2 cards that maybe we want to play. We're going to be forced to level one of our, 2 count of level 3s, the Yo or the Renka or something like that, because we have to hit that, and we have to have a Ron early play on our level as well. So we got to make sure that we hit that at 2 so that our finisher works. And because of that, our slots for off level 3s and other cards are very, very low. It was hard to even fit the climax swap, the drop salvager, and the stock swap in a deck like this because you lose so many slots for all the things that you need to play. And now, Book Door. We are going to talk about everybody's favorite top end, the Riri Yu top end. Same level 0 line as the last deck. 4 Rickies, 4 runners, 3 Chiris, 3 Renkas, because we're still playing the Yuri level 1 combo because it's still super amazing. And then, because we're not playing that Hervar pack, have a little bit extra space to play with. We're going to play the Kaide package. So 2 of the Kaide Globe Port, which is really cool. It has really cool interaction with Mindstalker and the Runner at level 0, which I'll get into. The Climax swap, the Drop Search, and the green Drop Salvage, because we are still going to play green, that we open up double blind stock lines at level 1. We are running the 1-0 Yuri, again, 4 of it, and then 4 of the new Tazusa. She is 6k on drop. We can pair her with the Renka on turns that we don't have Climax to be a bigger version of the 1-0 TD Penlin, because if we tap our back row and play the Tazusa at 6k instead of 5, then we get a Climax's blind stock, and then every turn we play the book with this, we're getting 2 blind stocks with the Renka and the Tazusa effect, and then all the searches from the Yuri. So we get the double blind stock and search same turn. And then 1 of the 1-1 Tazusa just for a little bit of extra oomph to shove us over to the early game. 2 of the free fresh counter just to make sure we can find it, since if we stock it early or something like that, because we are building up to a big finisher, cannot afford to pay it out or do anything weird like that. So we run 2 copies to make sure that if we trigger a door and multiple other climaxes, that we can eat ourselves out of our deck. That 1 is always in our grave when we salvage it. 1 of the 2-1 UU support, because we're playing the Riri finisher, we can be a little bit susceptible to things like memory kick counter or things that don't get us to that end of attacks for the freestand. So we need to make sure that we hit power thresholds. And then of course the 2-1 new back row also has pay to bounce, so a little bit of extra utility there. But in that slot, depending on your meta, you can also run the 2-1 bomb, which can remove things from the board. Be a real annoying anti-higher level card. Moving into level 3s, 4 Riris, 3 UUs, pretty standard line. We need 2 Riris and 1 U for our finishing turn. And we have a hyper select level 1 combo, so we just grab 2 of them, be 1 of the good to go. 3 of the Tazusa early play, because we are still firmly in green. We can play this. We want an efficient on stock early play so that we make sure we hit that 8 stock threshold, do our finishing combo, or maybe have a little bit of extra stock to dig for our climax, something like that. The TD Riri, which goes with the Kaide, already talked about how good this is, especially for a deck like this where none of our level 3s cantrip, and we need to make sure we hit our climax combo. And then again, because we are in green, we have Yuja off level 3, where we can either pull a card to the field, we already have our other pieces for a nice little heal, or makes it so our opponent can't play defensive counters if we're on a light or finisher turn, maybe going for 2 turns with extra heals or something like that. Also with the Riri combo, just opens up some options if our opponent is playing a very annoying defensive counter-based deck where our restander might get messed with, or things with money counter, stuff like that. Just gives us some option at the top. So similar game plan as the last deck, but because we're playing for a finisher, and because we don't have to run as many other cards, we get access to some of Assault Lily's cooler, more unique options. We get to jam inside the deck alongside our super crazy finisher, and we get to blind stock twice some turns. So quick overview, you're going to be rolling in resources with this deck. You're going to lean into that Yuri shell with the blind stock and the pluses as hard as possible, sort of the idea here. The new 1-0 Tazusa is going to give you those climaxes blind stocks with the Renka still, so same as the T-Shenlin, except with a little bit of extra power for the opportunity cost of having to have another card to tap. But the payoff being, when we have our climax down, we're going to get multiple blind stocks in 1 turn, as well as those same number of searches. So you're going to be really rolling in those resources, generating +2 stock on your combo turns in addition to searches for your upcoming turns. Super awesome. We get to run the 0-0 Kaide, which gives us a good back row at 0 if our 0 is extended, or our Renka Brainstorm, so we can start getting blind stocks at level 0, which is sick when it happens. It is a high roll play. It doesn't happen all the time, but it is something this version of the deck can easily, that other ones struggle to. There are other cards that you play to pair with Renka at 0, but they're not nearly as effective as the Kaide, because the Kaide is so multi-purpose. The Kaide also gives us a good 2-card stock out, something when we were talking about book pants that deck doesn't have, and that it's so debilitating when we trigger climaxes early because we don't have a meaningful heavy stock out that early in the game, and Kaide also fixes that problem. So all good there. Again, lower deck slot requirements for Riri UU compared to the other combos, compared to Choice, compared to the pants stuff we just looked at. So we have a lot more tech for Yuri to rip out of our deck, help us play into certain matchups better. And of course, we are playing Riri UU. You get to play one of the finishers with the highest theoretical reach any finisher in the game. I say theoretical because, of course, it's icy to get into that. And the high selectivity, if your opponent is in a bad state where their deck state isn't good for all the STL burns, you can just pivot into double restander, kill them normal. So you do have options. You have so many resources that you'll never fail to be able to do exactly what you want. Only the most worst and fast games where you have 3-4 turn games are bad for this deck. And even then, you're hard pressed to not get the resources pop off with your combo. It's very, very consistent. I've been floored by the consistency and resource generation of version of the deck compared to the old one, even though it looks and plays so similar. It's an incredibly improved version of the deck in almost every way. So the cons of this one, again, usual low deck speed issues, Yuri combos. Not too bad, but again, wanted to bring it up. You're forced to use defensive counters when you're in those super bad states where you trigger 3 climaxes, your whole deck's clean, you're forced to play a free fresh counter. If you don't rip a triple cancel off the free fresh counter and still stay at level 2, you're gonna be crippled, which is the same as choice, the same as with everything except the pan. So if you want to play defensive counters, this is not the deck for you. This is a pop off with your finisher and kill them kind of deck, even though you can take it slow in the mid game with like multiple turns of like 1 early play heal and stuff like that, and sit on a lot of stock and whatnot, like any modern deck can do. If you're forced to do the defensive counter stuff, you're not going to be able to pop off as hard. You're going down to single finisher usually, unless you're a cancel guy. So just something to keep in mind. This is a pop off with your finisher type deck. You can't use our resources for defensive options. Serve it to make sure that we do our craziest finisher. And again, I'm a broken record on this. Although the kill range is so insane, you kill people from 2-2-3, there's a high amount of variance. Because you're icy tailing in instances of 3, there's a higher chance that your opponent mills clean on each of those instances of 3. Even though you're milling your opponent with 18 cards for full combo, there are still going to be times where your opponent mills everything off the bottom, and then they cancel all your attacks, so all their climaxes at the top, and it's going to feel super bad because it's not traditional damage. So if you don't like icy tail burn, stuff like that, you can instead play the choice top end, which is traditional damage. But then, of course, you know, that has its own drawbacks where you're not deck breaking your opponent as well. Just something to keep in mind as sort of a trade-off between this build, other big crazy finisher build. So things that didn't make the cut. Did this last time with Del Signo Anniversary in the last deep dive, and went over pretty well, so I'm going to do it again. So these are things that I tested that I didn't feel needed sort of a corrected overview slide or anything like that to talk about. Just going to sort of touch on why they didn't work out and why they weren't really included. So the yellow stock gen packet, too awkward, worse than every other stock gen package that was out there. The fact that you need both of the 3/2s in hand to turn on the 1/1 event when you're trying to put your level 1 combo together and do literally anything else in the early game, where the only payoff is power that you don't really need, because if you wanted power, you could play any of the other combos that give power, or just the resonator. The extra power didn't really help, and then you get the blind stalker. There are other blind stalkers you can play that don't require any of this stuff, so it didn't need it. It's just the worst stock generation. Standby. Standby doesn't do anything. There's no payoff. I tried it like at least 3 or 4 different ways, even hybrid standby. It just doesn't do anything. There's no payoff. The 1/1 Kaide is really cool. The 2/3 with 3 soul is funny. The twin driver thing is kind of sick when you pop off and trigger a bunch of standbys, but then those cards don't do anything. And then the bodyguard, like everybody can hit over anything these days. Like it just didn't do anything. It's kind of frustrating because there are some really cool standby support cards and they just don't come together into anything that is unfortunately worth playing over any of the other standby decks. If you want to play standby, go sleeve up Mushoku or any of the other crazy standby decks that you'll have a lot more fun. Other cards that are interesting but either have really poor timing or no real use case in any build that I could find. The Kazuha that gives one of your cards mill run. The fact that it gives the card mill run only at the beginning of your climax phase means that that card is stuck with mill run on both phases. So it turns one of your cards into an actual mill runner, not something you can choose to, like, you know, force your opponent into some sort of crazy situation where you choose one card and then choose a different card or stuff like that. You can build your own K, which is really funny, and I've done it, but it's just funny. It's not effective. The 1/0 Chikawa, I believe is her name. She is kind of cool. She's a 6/5 beater, and then instead of being a JC, she's like back herself on another character's front attack, and you can make it so they don't become reversed. It's kind of cool, but it's the same as hand-on-coring, and there's not really anything that you want to hand-on-core too much. You'd rather just, you know, search things with Yuri or any of your other combos and then play them again. So no real use for it. And then the 2/1 Yuri, the replay effects, kind of cool for like a standby deck, but again, like standbys ever didn't fit in board play decks either, where you're like playing for board because the Hervar package is so like not bloated but like heavy, so you don't have the space for it. It's really cool but didn't shine anywhere. The other bar stuff for the Negsoul package with Finland, Negsoul's bad. It doesn't matter how you cut it, Negsoul sucks. Unless your card's like hexproof and your opponent can't touch it in any way and there's no way you can really interact with it, it's just bad. And even when it's super cheap and easily done, it's still not great because you'll sit across that random deck where it's just like, I run 4 blinkers, even with the added new, like the change is probably costed and you don't have the resources to do this in the deck that it fits in. So just no. The 1/0 Fumi, the axe support, is actually really, really cool, and you don't have a good use for it. All your best level 1 combo packages don't really hold board, and the one that does, the Ron, eats up so many slots that you can't play it alongside counters very effectively. You'd rather just go get it again because your combo is a quote-unquote infinite value engine. You could get it again and do it, and there's no real good. Even with the standby stuff, it didn't work out, and there weren't enough slots to take advantage of it anyway. Really cool card, and just nowhere to put it. So if Assault Lily gets a 3rd set, this card might be super sick, but right now it's not. The other 2 level 1 combos that are new in the set, they're just worse than the other combos that already exist. I'm not going to touch on why really that much. They're just worse. They're duplicative and just unneeded. Other cards that weren't really needed in any build, The bouncer with also anti-event, unless you're playing into anything but Love Life Superstar, where it's going to be really funny for you to tell them that they can't play any events, still play their cards that just burn you anyway, instead of shuffling climaxes back and then you're dead. You don't really need that. You don't really need the bounce. Other card that was surprisingly unneeded was the Shirogane style effect, the UU that gets really big and your opponent can't play backup stuff. Assault Lily gets big just with any of its stuff. You have the Resonator to pump power, you have the Yuri to pump power, the Re-Rig combo pumps power, like not hurting for power pumps, and you hit these power thresholds where it doesn't really matter that your opponent can play a backup, and if you want anti-event at the top, you have the Yuja that also has anti-backup. So this card ended up being like unneeded in almost every build I tried it, and it was always one of the first cards I cut. Unfortunate, it might fit into something in the future, but not really very useful on anything that I tested, and I tested pretty much every card, so I can't find a use for it right now. But hopefully, new set, new extra booster, new pair, something maybe in the future, a card like this might be able to shine, because it is cool, but just not something Assault Lily needs. They have some free access to power and ways to challenge board. So, reflections, conclusion. You can't always fit everything good into one final deck. There is no best Assault Lily deck. There is no one silver bullet. The set is super wide. The set is super good, and they all do different things. All 4 builds that I showed today, they're obviously more than this. You can mix and match them however you like. They all have their own unique strengths and weaknesses. There are going to be trade-offs no matter what you Lego together, whether you're playing one package or another. You can play pants and door. You can play bar and choice. You can play any combination of things that you want, but you're going to give up something to have something else. So can't fit it all into one silver bullet deck. There's always going to be a trade-off that you're going to make with a set this wide, but you don't have to worry about it because that's really good. And if you pick to play one way, it's because you value the one strengths over the other. And again, a wide second set is so much harder to test than an inherent one. Compared to when I did Del Segno Anniversary to try to figure out that, something that literally no one else in the world was working on at the time. This took forever, and there were a lot more people working on it and interested in talking with it about me and discussing and brewing and doing things than with Del Segno, and it was still harder, and it's so much harder. So it's a world of difference in difficulty, and that's why this video is coming out 2 months now after release, 1.5 months, something like that. It took a long time for to test everything 1 and 2 and make it as exhaustive as possible, and make sure this was up to the standard of quality of the last deep dive, which I felt was very exhaustive. This to be at least the same or close to the same level. Other things, sleeve every idea that comes across your desk, even if it's only for 1 or 2 games, just to vet it. Don't let your preconceived notions of what might be good or not get in the way. Just sleeve everything, try it. If it sucks, don't hesitate to drop it. If it's duplicative, if it's too similar to something you've tested before, isn't doing something different or isn't doing something any better, or it's just completely non-functional, just take it apart. Games, like whatever. Sleeves are cheap. Just even if you're busting up sleeves, just leave every stuff up, try it, and junk it if it doesn't work out, and then move on to the next thing. Other big thing, working ahead of time. Because we had things available, because I was on the SPDG set review, doing a lot of work beforehand, plotting things together, thinking about cards. It's always going to pay off. Always spitball and theory craft with as many people as are interested, many people who want to. If you're all invested, all the better about what they think is good, what their questions are. They're going to see things that you can't, or that you're got your blinders on for, and they're going to help you see a wider field of view that you otherwise couldn't unlock. So, and you can do all that work beforehand, because a lot of the time we have these card lists a lot in advance, or at least a lot of the hit cards. You can start thinking about how you work with the old cards for the benefit of having a second set. And of course, Assault Lily is the coolest modern set in Weiss Schwarz. I don't think it's close. That is my own personal bias opinion. You have so many different options, so many different cool things that you do. Even standby, which I was just junking on in the last slide, like that's still a thing you can do. It's not ineffective. It's just not effective in a way that's better than other standby decks. But like you can do anything, and it's got a cool, unique angle on it. You got the Kaida, it's like salvaging stuff like that. And that's just a build that I didn't even cover. That's like a build that I don't even think is worth talking about, and it's sick. Assault Lily is like if you just like Weiss for Weiss and Weiss's mechanics and invested in the game and how the game plays, Assault Lily has so many different wide range of peak effects. You can put together something interesting like every week for like a year. Like if you change your deck every week for locals, every week, come up with like a cool new thing to play every week for a year. And that's awesome. And I don't think you can say that about a lot of sets. It's like Assault Lily and like people like Bang Dream is like that because it's so wide. And Assault Lily only has 2 sets and you can do that, and that's super cool. But yep, that is it. I know this has been a long one. Thank you for joining me. I am not going to go over all this stuff on this slide like I usually do, but Weiss Fight. If you want to try out Assault Lily, hop hop on Weiss Fight, grab any of the many links in the description to Encore decks, or build your own, and hop on Weiss Fight, plug it in, and try it out. Weiss Fight is a free way to play Weiss in your browser, so you can test stuff in a simulator, play with people all over the world. Definitely give that a look. I'll have links and stuff for the Discord and the Patreon in the description. The dev is very amenable to advice or criticisms or suggestions about Weiss Fight to make it even better. So definitely give that a look if you're interested in trying out Assault Lily and you don't have your cards yet. But yep, that has been Carmen with Pittsburgh Weiss Schwartz. Definitely go out there and try Assault Lily. It's an amazing set. It's a lot of fun, and we will see you guys in the next one.